So now we're back on our main page here, and after a discussion about Model View Controller, you can kind of check out our JS bin again. So I'm here. I'm this time going to turn off my HTML tab because we don't need it anymore. We don't need CSS. We don't need the output tab. So we're just left with this JavaScript and this console tab that I'm turned on here. And now we can kind of talk about models more in depth. Models are basically, like I said, it's not just data, but it's like a way to put all of your data together. So the simple is that it's data, but then you also have, from a technical standpoint, you have things like variables and functions that relate to the data. So to kind of give you, like some examples of what I'm talking about, we can kind of start off with a basic example here. Suppose I had a variable in JavaScript that was for my first name, and it was going to hold my name, say VJ, and then had a last name. My last name is Man. Console log. Console log is just our command again to print out, our first name, because we don't want to alert it here. That would be kind of, we can use the alert function, but it would be kind of lame. I actually like the console log function better than the alert function. So if I run this here on this side, you can see my name is printed out here. Cool. Now what if I had maybe a function that did something like that, like function print, and I wanted to just say, for all purposes, I wanted to take in, a first name and a last name, and I wanted to print, or console log, my first name and my last name. I can just actually save time by just copying this here and pasting that here. And we can comment this out because we no longer need it. Instead of saying console log, I can just say print, and then I can just pass it first name and last name. Still get that VJ Man, and that's great. So again, I've got all this stuff here, and if you ever imagine like web development, you could see how I'm declaring all these variables one by one. What if I have another person? I have to create second first name or something like that, right? Because I can't use first name anymore. So this one is going to be Samantha. And then var second last name. And I could say New York. And I could print out second first name, and also let's not forget our second last name. And now I'm going to clear this, run it. Oh, let's see here. And this is also part of the thing. Oh, I spelled print wrong. There we go. BJ Minutes, Samantha New York. So, again, that's part of the confusion. If you have a lot of variables, you end up typing stuff that is, long. Maybe you forget what exactly the name was. If you're just sitting here and declaring all these variables, it's easy to see how this code can get very messy. I'll give you an example, actually. I used to work on a project that was very much code intensive. Just like you're seeing here. And so I'm going to go back to this example that I kind of showed before. You saw the website last time, which was this pre-name. This is a really messy website, right? But it works, but it's messy. And my problem was that I had a whole bunch of code going on in here. I had PHP, it's built off of WordPress. I had, my HTML that had function calls in PHP. Then, down here, I actually had JavaScript and jQuery going on at the same time. And, I had tags being declared. I had divs being set and paddings being set with CSS and jQuery. I had clicks going on with links. and I was hiding stuff on a click of a link, but then I was changing colors with it, and all these functions here, they're all out, they're all like slammed together. The page works, but for me, it was like a nightmare to kind of go into this and go, okay, what was I thinking? Because remember, this is just one page. In WordPress, you have like tons of pages. You have, sidebars, single pages. You have, I guess, functions that you add yourself. And then, of course, header files. So for me, like to go in here and go, okay, well, what was this page supposed to do again? Well, what's going on this page? I know this page has the most stuff on it. It gets overwhelming. So that's why, like, you need some way to organize stuff. And, the best way to do that is with Backbone. The framework is pretty cool in that, like, you can just start building objects right away. So I'm going to give you, like, a little preview of what an object is first, and then we can kind of go into, like, how Backbone makes objects even better than what they are in JavaScript. So the traditional object in JavaScript is kind of like this. Var object, I'll just say var object, and then I can give it a name, like I had here, first name, and we'll just make it default VJ, right? Then I can give this object the last name, and I can say Menon, and then I can have that function print, right? And I can pass it in, or I don't have to pass it in actually because of the keyword this. So I could say console log this dot first name plus this dot last name. Cool. So now I don't really need this stuff anymore. I can comment it all out. And I've declared my object. Now all I have to do is just say object.print, and we should see, if we clear the console, VJ Menon. Awesome. But again, like I was saying, now that this stuff is organized, it's still kind of like not extremely clear what exactly this is, and also I have to sit there and say, okay, I've built my object for VJ, but now I have to make object 2, which, I could call them, what they are. I could say this is VJ. I could say VJ print. I could have one that's Samantha. And then I could just copy all this over, right? And I'd have to change it over here. Okay, well, this is Samantha. New work, right? And here, I could do Samantha.print. Not to forget to do our semicolons. So now when I clear this and I run it, get VJ Menon, Samantha, new work. Great. It works, but again, like I'm still declaring a lot of stuff and writing a lot of messy code. So, is there a better way to do this? Yeah, there is actually. We could go even deeper or like even more further with this example by just saying we're going to define people or a person. So a person could be built. So a person is going to be anybody. Anybody has a first name, anybody has a last name, and anybody has like the ability to tell people their name, basically print the name on the console, if you will. But let's just say like everybody can do this. So what I want to do is I want to just be able to make this kind of thing a person and then give it a name, a last name, and then be able to like print it without having to do this over and over and over again. So in JavaScript, we have things called constructor functions, right? So typically, like if I wanted to do a constructor function in JavaScript, that is going to build me this output object with a first name, a last name, and print. All I have to do is just like create a function because JavaScript has everything is done in functions. So I'm going to say var person, and the person is going to have this name, first name, and we're just let's say it's set to default nothing, and it's going to have a last name. Then it's also going to have the ability to print right, and I'm just going to say console log its first name, just like we've been doing before. Now, if I want to like get rid of all this, what I've built here is basically my first model, if you will. It's kind of like this is what's known as object-oriented programming. No longer, I've gone from just saying, okay, I'm going to declare a first name and a last name, and then I'm going to create some sort of function that tells me the last name, and then I'm going to print the first name and the last name. And then I have to do it again, make a second first name, second last name, print. Instead, I'm going to put all of that, all these things, all that functionality down into here. And then I'm just going to say all of this stuff is just person, right? And that makes it way easier for me to just say I want to use a person, I want to make a new person, as opposed to having to do all this. This is all really granular, you know, it's unneeded, it's unnecessary. When you're building stuff, you know, you want to make it very, very straightforward and simple. You want to make it easy. So by burying all of this stuff in here, we make it easier on ourselves. So if we want to just say var vj is equal to a new person, right? And then vj.print, clear our console. Well, vj doesn't have a name yet, but we can pass him a name, right? We could say vj's name is vj. So if I press run now, then we get vj. Of course, I have to set the last name. You know, put my last name there. But by default, here we go, vj man. By default, I no longer have to worry about building all this stuff out. It's already all there. Now, this is just simpler. I have like a simple line of code. And all of these things come with, if I were to make Samantha, we'll just call her Sam this time, she also gets that functionality that she has a first name that I can set. And then she also has the ability to print. Cool. So far so good. We've talked about models and how to do. We've talked about objects and how to like build, you know, constructor functions that take in, you know, all of these like, you know, tons of data that's just like floating everywhere, and then just put it inside like a simple function, and then being able to call it down here, and then being able to just give all of these things like automatically to one object. It's so much easier to read, and it's so much cleaner when it's this format as opposed to how we had it before. So in our next video, we'll talk about how we can save ourselves some even more extra time using Backbone, so that we don't have to go in here and set first name, last name, and then, you know, run a print. Wouldn't it be way easier to just kind of like just do vj print, and vj print we could just pass in an object and give it the name here, and then in one line we've taken care of like having 3 lines, and now we have very elegant, simple code that just works. So that'll be the next